Antifa, of course, is not an actual organization.
Yeah. Try to join it. Go out and say, I'd like to join. Can I have a membership card? See what happens. You're not going to get anything because it's not, they don't have the intelligence report mentions this itself. It says it's a sort of attitude, a general tendency. There's no actual formal membership. There's no leadership. And they're exactly right. There isn't this notion that there is some shadowy Borg of Antifa super soldiers somewhere. Like, it doesn't work that, I mean, Antifa, it stands for anti-fascist. I would think a lot of people would identify themselves as opposed to fascism, probably the majority of the country. And so the way that the document itself describes it, and the federal government generally has, as I've seen it, they describe it as inclusive of all sorts of different tendencies, from socialists to anarchists to communists to, people generally opposed to authoritarianism. I mean, that is
they know nothing about it. Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Try to get those people all together in one meeting and not, yeah, exactly. So, how long have they been working on this? Do you have a sense of that?
When President Trump announced about several weeks ago, he vowed that he was going to designate Antifa a terrorist organization. The same day that he did that, ironically enough, I was given another intelligence report from a source of mine within the FBI showing that there had been no evidence of, Antifa links to violence committed in the DC area, which, there was a lot of unrest at that point. And presumably that was the whole reason Trump made the statement, because he said it after, I don't remember if it was the tear gassing in front of the White House of protesters, but it was some big conflict. And so, I mean, that was really representative. And my understanding is that the subsequent intelligence reports that came out still couldn't find any evidence of it. That's not to say they didn't find evidence of sponsorship of violence, but that was attributable to far right groups, anti-government groups, things like that. Not white supremacist groups, not Antifa. So, evidence for group involvement in violence exists. It just happens to cut in the opposite direction of what they're saying. There was a recent report out in The Guardian that summarized the results of a study done by, I think it was a university. They found that in the last 25 years, whatever you think of Antifa, they haven't killed a single person. If you compare that to white supremacist threat or the far right threat, which, by the way, President Trump's own FBI director Chris Wray, says that is the primary and salient terror concern, and he's right. They've killed dozens of people in the last year or two. So there's no comparison, and but that's maybe not the point. This could be, and folks in the intelligence community speculate and say this to me too, and kind of hinted they know more than they can say, because parts of this may be classified, or no more than they're sometimes willing to say. Have intimated that this, despite the facts, the priority right now is Antifa, this poorly defined, loosely defined group.
So when you say no more than they're willing to say about the intentions of the administration, or that this group of folks that...
I mean, these operations,
right.
Because, I understand there was a lot more going on in Portland than is publicly known, that they've got the Justice Department to sign off on things that we don't know. And, the problem is that we have a profoundly not forthcoming administration in terms of what they're up to. What we know is that when President Trump issued his executive order on the monuments of all things, if you read the text of that, we all kind of laughed at the monuments part because it was funny, but it also includes protecting federal property, which is extraordinarily broad. And so that authorized the Department of Homeland Security to then, in response, create a task force called the Protecting American Communities Task Force, or PACT for short. That is an RoboCop enough of a title for a task force. Under that, they were able to send Border Patrol units. I should point out, DHS is the biggest law enforcement agency in the country, far bigger than, if you compare the size of Border Patrol to, say, FBI, far more agents. People don't understand this. You compare it to DEA, you compare it to the Marshals. They're just way bigger, less training in general, less disciplined, more partisan, more responsive, because that's what DHS was designed to do. They were designed to be more responsive to the president. When you look at the Justice Department, we're adults. We know that things aren't perfect, and it doesn't live. It's not as neutral as they'd have you think. However, they at least have the presumption, or at least both publicly and culturally inside, the perception is that they are not supposed to be an outfit or arm or extension of the White House. That's not the case with DHS. It's supposed to be much more responsive to the White House and the president. That was what it was intended to do. And now we're seeing a president who's willing to push that to its limits. And it's really frightening.
So this was all based off of this article that came out in Rolling Stone. Is that sort of where they got this idea of okay, here's the in? The in is we tie these folks who are in this article, who now have like Antifa flags on their Twitter accounts or whatever it is, or supportive of the protests, because we know that they were in Syria, we tie that, that's our way in, is that they worked in Syria, they fought with against ISIS, and that's our way into building a larger narrative around the organization, quote unquote organization of Antifa and activists who are fighting law enforcement agencies on the ground. Is that kind of what their yes. legal path is?
Yeah, my understanding is that this is one of several things that they're throwing against the wall to see what sticks. And we don't yet know what the other attempts are, but this is an indication that there's a push, as I'm told, towards this. I mean, I'm sure we're going to see more come out in terms of, getting a terror designation is hard if you've got a domestic group, as it should be, because people have civil liberties and they have protections. People don't, it shouldn't be easy for a White House or any authority to just say, oh, this person is a, enemy of the state. So, that this was one tactic. It seemed like they weren't able to dredge up a whole lot. Maybe the guy didn't even have his heart in it. The way it's written, they certainly tried, but a lot of times they're assigned these ridiculous intelligence products that they have to end up, answering questions to. But the question now is how far this goes and what else they're doing, because this is what we know, but this is just the part of the iceberg that you can see. I can only speculate what the rest is.
Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers.